Sleep paralysis. Imagine waking up in your bed, eyes open, brain fully alert, yet your body refuses to move a single muscle. That's sleep paralysis, and it happens when the normal mechanics of sleep get out of sync. During REM sleep, the stage when most vivid dreaming occurs, your brain deliberately paralyzes the body. This is called REM atonia, and it prevents you from physically acting out whatever's happening in your dreams. Normally, that paralysis lifts the moment you wake, but sometimes the transition misfires. Your consciousness turns back on while your body is still locked in dream mode. That's when people report the infamous experience of being pinned down, unable to breathe properly, and often feeling a presence in the room. Those terrifying figures or shadows aren't real intruders. They're hallucinations, created by your still active dreams spilling into wakefulness. In other words, your brain is overlaying dream imagery onto reality while you're trapped in a body that won't respond. It usually lasts less than 2 minutes, but in the moment, it feels much longer. The glitch itself is harmless, though terrifying enough to inspire centuries of folklore about demons sitting on chests or night spirits suffocating sleepers. The real explanation is much less supernatural. Your brain just booted up faster than your body did. Hypnic jerk. You're drifting off to sleep, body finally relaxing, when suddenly, bam! You feel like you're falling off a cliff and your whole body jolts awake. That's a hypnic jerk, also called a sleep start. As you enter stage 1 of sleep, your brain reduces motor neuron activity, which makes your muscles lose their usual tension. But sometimes your nervous system misinterprets the muscle relaxation as a sign that you're falling. In response, it fires off a burst of electrical signals, essentially slamming the panic button. The result? Your body twitches hard enough to yank you awake. The effect is stronger when you're sleep-deprived, stressed, or running on too much caffeine. Basically, the more wired you are, the more likely your brain is to trip its own alarm right as you're trying to power down. It's harmless, though embarrassing if it happens in public, like when you're dozing on a plane and jolts so hard you knock over your seatmate's drink. Nothing says pleasant travel companion like an involuntary arm flail at 30,000 feet. False awakening. You wake up, roll out of bed, maybe even start brushing your teeth, then realize you're still fast asleep. That's a false awakening. And it happens when your brain tricks you into dreaming about the act of waking up. During REM sleep, the brain's visual and sensory systems are highly active, almost as if you're awake. Sometimes that activity gets redirected toward familiar routines, like getting out of bed or starting the day. Because those actions are so ingrained, the dream version feels authentic enough to fool you. False awakenings often come in loops. In other words, you wake up multiple times, only to realize each one was still a dream. This looping happens because the brain is caught between REM sleep and actual wakefulness, bouncing back and forth instead of making a clean transition. It's almost like being stuck inside a low-budget sequel to Groundhog Day, where all you ever do is keep trying to get out of bed. Sleepwalking. Sleepwalking, or somnambulism, is when parts of your brain are asleep while others are wide awake. Normally, during deep, non-REM sleep, your body is kept still by a kind of built-in paralysis. But in sleepwalking, that system malfunctions. The motor control regions of the brain switch on, while the higher reasoning areas stay offline. The result? You can walk, cook, even try to drive, but you're operating with the judgment of a malfunctioning Roomba. Because the prefrontal cortex, the decision-making hub, is still asleep, most sleepwalking behaviors are repetitive and aimless. People might shuffle around the house, open and close doors, or rearrange objects without any real purpose. In more extreme cases, they may even attempt more complex tasks with no memory of it afterward. Genetics plays a role, and triggers include sleep deprivation, stress, alcohol, or even fevers. Kids are more prone to it because their brains spend more time in deep, slow-wave sleep, the stage where the mind is least responsive, making it easier for the body to go rogue. It's generally harmless, though the danger comes from the environment, stairs, stoves, or streets. Waking a sleepwalker isn't dangerous in itself, but letting them wander into traffic definitely is. Sleep apnea. You're fast asleep minding your own business when, suddenly, your throat decides to close up shop and block your breathing. Your body panics, jolts you just enough to gasp, and then shoves you back into sleep, only for the cycle to repeat dozens or even hundreds of times a night. That's sleep apnea. The most common type is obstructive sleep apnea, where the soft tissues of the throat relax too much during sleep and collapse into the airway. Less common is central sleep apnea, where the brain itself forgets to send the breathe now signals. In both cases, oxygen levels drop, sleep gets shredded into fragments, and your heart and brain never get the deep rest they're supposed to. From the outside, it's often noticed by partners first. Loud snoring punctuated by eerie stretches of silence, followed by a dramatic snort or choke as breathing restarts. It sounds less like peaceful slumber and more like someone losing a wrestling match with their own uvula. Left untreated, it's not just annoying. It raises the risk of high blood pressure, heart disease, stroke, and memory problems. The go-to fix is CPAP therapy, a mask that keeps airways pressurized so they stay open. Sure, it might look like you're suiting up for nighttime scuba diving, but it beats suffocating 200 times a night. Narcolepsy. Narcolepsy is the ultimate betrayal by your own brain. One moment you're wide awake, the next moment you're out cold. These sudden sleep attacks can strike in the middle of a meal, a meeting, or even mid-sentence, because the brain can't keep the boundary between sleep and wakefulness in place. To make matters worse, many people who suffer from narcolepsy also have cataplexy, a sudden loss of muscle tone triggered by strong emotions. Laugh too hard at a joke, and your knees might buckle like someone pulled the plug on your body. What's really happening is your REM paralysis system firing at the wrong time, dropping dream mode muscle shutdown into waking life. The culprit is usually a shortage of orexin, a neurotransmitter that acts like the brain's sleep-wake traffic cop. Without enough orexin, the system that's supposed to keep sleep and wake neatly separated starts blurring the lines. The result? Consciousness flickers like a faulty light switch, and the next thing you know, you flipped into dreamland with zero warning. Night terrors. Night terrors look like a scene out of a horror movie. Screaming, thrashing, eyes wide open. Yet the person isn't awake. Unlike nightmares, which happen during REM sleep and usually leave you with a vivid memory, night terrors occur in deep, non-REM sleep. That's why the person almost never remembers what happened the next morning. What's going on is a kind of partial arousal. The brain gets stuck between deep sleep and wakefulness, activating the body's fear response without fully switching on consciousness. Heart rate spikes, breathing quickens, and the body thrashes as if responding to a threat. But since the higher brain areas stay offline, the person isn't aware of their own panic. Night terrors are most common in children, though adults can get them too. When they strike, the episode itself usually lasts only a few minutes, but feels endless to anyone who can do nothing but watch it unfold. For the sleeper, it's mostly a blank space. For parents or partners, it's a front row seat to one of the most unsettling glitches in sleep. Watching someone fight invisible terrors they'll never remember, but a witness will never forget. Dreamtime distortion. You close your eyes for a short nap and dream an entire epic saga that feels like it lasted hours, maybe even days. Then you wake up and realize only 10 minutes have passed. That's dreamtime distortion, your brain's uncanny ability to warp the sense of time inside dreams. During REM sleep, the brain processes information in a different rhythm than it does when awake. Without the usual cues from clocks, sunlight, or your internal circadian system, your perception of time gets distorted. The brain can compress events, skipping from scene to scene, or stretch them out, making seconds feel like entire chapters. Experiments back this up. When researchers signal sleepers during REM and ask them to count in their dreams, the timing is close to real time. But once you add storylines, emotions, and rapid scene changes, the brain plays fast and loose with the stopwatch. So if you wake up from what felt like a 3-hour feature film, only to find your clock swears you barely got through the opening credits, just know it's your brain having a bit of fun with time. Sleeptalking. Sleeptalking, or somniloquy, is when your mouth starts running while your conscious brain is still offline. Sleeptalking usually happens in light, non-REM sleep, when your vocal cords still have enough baseline muscle tone to move, letting words slip out as the brain's language circuits fire without the filter of full awareness. It's usually nonsense. Grunts, half-sentences, or random phrases stitched together like badly edited audio clips. But sometimes it's surprisingly clear, which is why roommates and partners love to retell the embarrassing highlights the next morning. Unlike sleepwalking, sleeptalking doesn't require the motor system to override paralysis. It only needs the vocal cords to kick on for a moment. That's enough to turn stray brain activity into actual words. Genetics, stress, fever, and sleep deprivation all raise the odds, making it all the more likely you'll wake up to reports that you held a 3 a.m. press conference about tacos. Bruxism. You wake up with your jaw sore, your head pounding, and your teeth feeling like they've been through a demolition derby. That's bruxism, the unconscious grinding or clenching of teeth during sleep. Normally, jaw muscles relax as you drift deeper into the night. But in bruxism, the brainstem pathways that control chewing don't fully switch off. Instead, they spike during microarousals, brief bursts of activity that happen as the brain shifts between sleep stages. Each spike sends a signal to the jaw muscles, and they clamp down with forces far stronger than normal chewing, powerful enough to do real damage over time. Dentists can spot it instantly. Your teeth take on that flattened, sanded-down look, as if you've been trying to gnaw your way out of a cage. That's usually their cue for a lecture, as if you've been doing it on purpose. You know, like everything else you do when you're unconscious. Meanwhile, your partner gets the real punishment, trying to nod off next to what sounds like a garbage disposal full of silverware. Nobody mentions that in their wedding vows. REM sleep behavior disorder. You're in the middle of a dream. Maybe you're running from something. Maybe you're throwing punches, and instead of staying in your head, your body decides to act it out. That's REM sleep behavior disorder, a glitch where the normal paralysis of REM sleep fails. Normally, REM keeps your body from moving so you don't act out your dreams, but in this disorder, that switch fails to engage. The dream commands fire down the nervous system, and without the usual break, the muscles obey. That's when partners report being kicked, punched, or even strangled by someone who's technically still asleep. Some people thrash around, others bolt out of bed, and a few even try to fight off imaginary intruders. It's dangerous not just for the sleeper, but for anyone within arm's reach. Researchers think it's related to the loss or dysfunction of dopamine-producing neurons in the brainstem. That's why it sometimes shows up years before neurodegenerative diseases like Parkinson's or Lewy body dementia. Whatever the cause, the effect is the same. Your dreams stop being private screenings and turn into live-action scenes. Nocturnal leg cramps. Few things can drag someone out of a deep sleep faster than the sudden, stabbing pain of a calf muscle seizing so violently it might rip itself in two. That's a nocturnal leg cramp, an involuntary muscle spasm that can flip you from dreaming to writhing in bed in seconds. It happens when motor neurons misfire and send a flood of signals that force the muscle fibers to contract all at once. Normally, these neurons quiet down during sleep, but dehydration, low minerals like potassium or magnesium, or even an odd foot position can make them unstable and trigger a spasm. When it finally lets go, the muscle aches like you just ran sprints in your sleep. Stretching, walking it off, or supplements might help. But in the moment, none of that matters. You're too busy clutching your leg and cursing biology. Kleine-Levin syndrome. Imagine sleeping 18 hours a day, not for one night, but for weeks at a time. That's Kleine-Levin syndrome, nicknamed Sleeping Beauty syndrome, though it's a lot less magical than it sounds. During an episode, people are overwhelmed by an irresistible need to sleep, often waking only to eat or stumble to the bathroom before crashing back into bed. The cause isn't fully understood, but evidence points to glitches in the hypothalamus and thalamus, the brain regions that regulate sleep, appetite, and body rhythms. Some researchers suspect it's tied to an autoimmune response or viral triggers that throw these systems off balance. When patients are awake during an episode, they're often not themselves, Confusion, irritability, disorientation, and even changes in behavior or appetite show up. It's like the brain has downshifted into survival mode, trimming everything to the bare minimum. Sleep, food, repeat. What makes it worse is the unpredictability. Episodes can last days to weeks, then vanish for months, only to come roaring back without warning. It's extremely rare, only a few hundred documented cases worldwide. But for the people who live with it, life gets carved into two states: the weeks lost almost entirely to unconsciousness and the anxious time spent waiting for the next round to hit. Restless leg syndrome. Restless leg syndrome isn't about pain. It's more like an itch you can't scratch, buried deep in your legs, sparking an overwhelming urge to move. People describe it as crawling, tingling, or buzzing sensations that flare up when they're lying down, especially at night. The only relief is movement, which is why so many end up pacing their bedrooms instead of sleeping. The leading theory is that restless leg syndrome stems from iron deficiency in the brain, particularly in dopamine-producing areas that control movement. Without enough iron, those brain networks go haywire, sending the move your leg signals even when you'd prefer to rest. Low vitamin B12 might also play a role, though the link isn't clearly proven. In some people, the condition fades away on its own, vanishing for months or years before returning, or never coming back at all. But when it sticks around, it shows up at the worst possible time, right when you're trying to wind down. Instead of drifting into sleep, your body forces you into a loop of shifting, stretching, or walking, just to quiet the signals for a moment. It's less a bedtime routine than a hostage situation where your own legs are the captors. Sleep hallucinations. Picture this. You're half awake in bed when suddenly you see a figure standing in the corner, hear someone calling your name, or even feel something brushing against your skin. None of it is real. It's a sleep hallucination, a vivid sensory experience that happens at the edges of sleep, either as you're drifting off, in what's called the hypnagogic state, or as you're just waking up, in the hypnopompic state. What's happening is a clash between dream circuitry and waking consciousness. During REM sleep, the brain generates highly realistic imagery, sounds, and sensations as part of dreaming. Normally, that activity shuts down the second you awake, but if you wake up too suddenly or drift into sleep too slowly, your brain, caught between modes, overlays dream content onto reality. These hallucinations can be visual, auditory, or tactile. People often report shadowy figures, phantom voices, loud bangs, or a tap on the shoulder, all of which are very unsettling and feel very real. Sleep hallucinations tend to be more common with sleep deprivation, stress, or irregular schedules. In other words, if your brain is already running ragged, it's more likely to trip over its own wires and give you a flash of a nightmare before you're fully under or fully awake. Sleep is supposed to be easy, but our brains still manage to mess it up. If you've had any odd dreams or sleep glitches, drop them in the comments. I might just steal them for part 2.